Dear colleagues, to be honest, I really hope that in the second live case, we will need to use the reentry device so I could prove my point, but Professor Bisdas was flawless, so he ruined it for me. But however, we know at least in the last 10 years, we do endo first for all kinds of chronic total occlusions in the aortic or FEMORO-POPLITEAL segments, and the success rate has increased dramatically due to the use of the new devices and techniques. Of course, we can argue about this, but maybe the best way to recanalize a vessel is to go intraluminal, but this is rarely possible, and sometimes we have to do a sub-intimal recanalization. The industry has flooded us with a lot of different crossing devices, and whenever we're planning to cross a CTO, we should plan whether to go antegrade or retrograde, and this is highly dependent on the plaque morphology, as Professor Bisdas has already shown. So, of course, we have crossing devices, we have reentry devices, and what's new is the percutaneous bypass technique. Although the reentry devices have been around for about 20 years, there is still little information about their efficacy. So I'll show you a couple of randomized trials which showed that when the endpoint is technical efficacy, we see 100%. So it was useful in all the cases that was used, compared to 42% when manual reentry was attempted. And what is more important, that in the first group, the mean procedural time was 36 minutes compared to 55 in the second group, and this is also true for the mean fluoroscopy time, which is 29 against 39 minutes. This is a systematic review, and here the endpoints are complication and technical success, and device accuracy, which is defined the distance between the point of true vessel reconstitution and the eventual reentry. The success rate of the outback catheter was about 93%. Only 7 cases failed due to heavy calcification, but this is true for all reentry devices. No major and only 17 minor complications. What about the aortoiliac segment? This time, the endpoint of this research was long-term outcomes after intervention, and you can see there's practically no difference whether when we use a reentry device or we do manual reentry, virtually no difference. The last one is a systematic review of 30 studies and more than 1,000 lesions, which shows that reentry device was used in roughly 20% of the cases, and the procedural success rate was close to 90%, as cited earlier. The complication rate is really low. It's rated here from 0 to 10%, although in our experience it's closer to 0. The only real complication might be a vessel puncture, but usually it heals by itself. And the primary patency rates are absolutely comparable. There are many reentry devices on the market today, but maybe one of the most widely used are the Pioneer catheter, the Outback, and the newly developed Go-Back catheter. The Pioneer catheter is really sophisticated and very accurate because it has an IVUS platform. It has a side port where the nitinol needle is entering the true vessel, but by using the IVUS, we can very easily point the needle towards the true lumen and make the reentry very accurately. It was the first FDA-approved device. It has IVUS integrated system. It's very accurate, that's true. And as with most reentry devices, it's relatively stiff, so it's difficult to track up and over the bifurcation, especially in cases where we have very calcified aorta and very difficult angles. And the other main disadvantage is that you need a capital investment in buying this IVUS platform. The Outback catheter is much more familiar with. It has fenestration about 12 millimeters from the tip, which practically means that every time we want to re-enter, we have to do some small dissection in order to puncture the reconstitution artery. It's again difficult to track up and over the tight bifurcation. Severe calcium is again disadvantage, and it makes the penetration much more difficult. What we were lucky enough to get our hands on in the last year is this go-back catheter, which in my view has several advantages. It can be used as a guiding catheter and support catheter, and in cases where we see that the guiding wire is going outside of the lumen, when we show the needle a little bit and point it toward the right direction, we can continue with the intraluminal recanalization. So it's a very stiff catheter, so it follows the guiding wire everywhere. The other advantage, in my view, is that the needle is going straight from the top of the catheter, so in theory, you can puncture the distal cap very precisely without causing further dissection, because most of the time our concern is not to prolong unnecessarily the distal dissection zone, because we save it for eventual bypass in case the endovascular procedure fails. So this is very important for us. Furthermore, it's a very low profile. So it uses both 014 and 018 guide wire system. It has several applications. For example, I believe Dr. Nikolov has mentioned that one of the applications is to puncture this relatively easy looking cap, but sometimes it takes a lot of effort to puncture, the use of several CTO guide wires and so on. But by using the device and only showing the needle for half a centimeter, you can puncture the cap, and with the hydrophilic wire, you can easily continue with the procedure. You see here we have a flush occlusion of the SFA, and although a lot of effort is put to go back into the true lumen, it seems rather difficult. So by using the entry device, a lot of time can be saved, because otherwise we have to go retrograde or perform any of the techniques that we saw in the previous presentation. That can save a lot of time and radiation exposure. And you can see here the distal cap is, it gives us the information that antegrade reentry would be extremely difficult, so we should go retrograde. But in case we decide to use a re-entry device, we again can save a lot of effort and a lot of time. Here again, when we see the distal SFA or the proximal popliteal artery, very diseased, a lot of calcium, a lot of plaque. So again, going back into the true lumen seems rather impossible, or at least very difficult. By using re-entry device, it makes the procedure much, much easier. So we all know that re-entry into the true lumen is the most challenging part of performing CTO recanalization. Re-entry device allows us for limitation of dissection, which, as I mentioned, is very important to re-enter as soon as possible. And although it adds to the cost of the procedure, it saves a lot of time, operational time, and which is more important, radiational exposure. Thank you.